Coming in at number 10 is our Charlie Regulus Tooth Fairy team. As many of you know, this team is incredible because it offers a combination of offensive and defensive utility. This team does struggle a little bit on Limbo 6-2, even though it is weak to stars, simply because of the unique mechanic that this Limbo cycle provides. In this particular fight, the Nightmare Lady summons one tanky critter per round. And these critters, basically whenever they take damage, all damage taken is reduced to 1 point of damage, and they need 4 individual points of damage in order for them to be KO'd. And the issue with Charlie is that both of her attack incantations are single attack incantations. The good news is that her ultimate does count for 2 points of individual damage for each critter. However, this team does struggle a little bit with survivability just because the critters do stick around longer and do lay out their onslaught of attacks on this team, which is actually quite squishy. And even though Tooth Fairy does have her passive Baby Tooth heals as well as Regulus's Riot and Roll ultimate gimmicks, but even with the combination of those two, I do find from my playthrough experience that this team has a hard time surviving. Nevertheless, this team does have semi-decent clear times with Limbo 6-2. Coming in at number 9 is none other than our popular team, Jessica, Sotheby, and Bkornblume. With this Limbo cycle, the Limbo 6-1 is effective against Plant Afflatus, so typically you would run this sort of poison team on side 2. The nice thing about this team is that both the sub DPS are Sotheby as well as our main DPS, Jessica, both have a fantastic arsenal of multi-target attacks, which will allow you to keep the critters under control. And Sotheby, actually in particular, with her poison stacks, you inflict your poison and then the poison activates, which does 2 points of damage on the critters, which is quite nice. And Bkornblume is able to machine gun down the Nightmare Lady, which is very effective and puts this team solidly in the number 9 spot. Coming in at number 8 is our Jessica, Sotheby, and Tooth Fairy team. Once again, we have the Poison Core, in which Jessica and Sotheby both have very versatile multi-target mechanics, and Sotheby in particular excels on Limbo 6-2 because her poison stacks trigger an additional point of damage on the critters, which allows you to double the speed at which you take down the critters before they fire back with their own attacks. Now, Tooth Fairy is nice for this team because Tooth Fairy allows you to have passive heals as well as crit defense and crit resist shred, which will help with accelerating the amount of damage output that this team is capable of dishing out. Coming in at number 7 is Jessica, Sotheby, and Ann and Lee. I think something that Ann and Lee brings to the table that Tooth Fairy cannot is her ability to buff your damage output, mitigate damage, as well as empower incantation. Now, the problem with Limbo 6-2 is that the Nightmare Lady is immune to control, which means that Druvis dropped off this list, and Ann and Lee's days will not daze the enemy, Nightmare at least. And ideally you want to kill the critters, not daze them, because the longer the critters are around, the more damage piles up on your team. And so for this reason, I do believe that Ann and Lee has an edge over Tooth Fairy in that she is able to mitigate damage as well as increase the damage output of your team. Coming in at number 6 is our first Eureka follow-up team, 37, Miss Newbabel, and Tooth Fairy. What is beautiful about this team, particularly on this stage, Limbo 6-2, is that Miss Newbabel is able to generate a ton of Eureka stacks for 37 in the form of her ultimate. And in my previous video, I showcased how you can actually accelerate Miss Newbabel's Moxie from 0 to 5 to get her ultimate up the following turn. What's cool about this team is that not only are you able to generate lots and lots of Eureka for 37 with Miss Newbabel's ultimate, but every time Miss Newbabel gets hit, she fires back with a follow-up attack, which can be very useful against these critters who not only do multiple hits, usually anywhere between 2 to 4 attacks per critter, but additionally Miss Newbabel is able to absorb a lot of that damage with her own shields, which help with the survivability. Coming in at number 5 is our second Eureka follow-up team, 37 Lilya and Tooth Fairy. What is incredible about the Lilya and 37 dual comp is that you are able to generate at least 3 Eureka per turn by casting either 237 incantations and Lilya's Crosswind Takeoff, or maybe like a 37 incantation, Lilya Crosswind Takeoff, and 37 ultimate. It is basically a straightforward team in which you let Tooth Fairy's baby teeth maintain the survivability of this team, and you are dishing out tons and tons of damage. And with all this 37 follow-up spamming, the critters have a hard time surviving because 37 is able to do 2 points of damage per hit on the critters in the form of mental damage as well as Genesis damage. And then, with her follow-up attacks, it also does mental damage and Genesis damage, 2 more points of damage on all the critters, as well as the main boss, of course, to make it so that the critters hardly are able to get any damage in on this very proactive team comp. Coming in at number 4 is our Centurion, Pickles, Medicine Pocket team comp. Now, this is a team that will be neutral on side 1 and is actually very good on side 1 for multiple reasons. One big reason is because the enemies, the critters this time around that accompany the main boss on Limbo 6-1, when you debuff them, they do additional damage to you. So for this reason, you want to play more vanilla teams, such as Centurion, who is just straight damage, as well as Pickles, who is straight damage, but you still have Medicine Pocket to boost the power of Centurion's damage output with his debuff, as well as being able to daze with his ultimate, and of course healing. I think this team is actually very versatile in both dealing high single target, and high multi-target damage, and for this reason they are, I believe, very worthy of spot number 4. Coming in at number 3 is our dual DPS star multi-target team comp, 37 Regulus and Tooth Fairy. I think this team has a perfect balance of offensive and defensive capabilities, and what is nice about this team comp is that even though it is not a traditional follow-up Eureka team comp, in a way you are still accelerating the pace at which you're generating Eureka, because you, with this team comp, will be shuffling aggressively for 37's attack incantations, and can thus keep up with the Eureka follow-up spamming pretty much almost at the same rate as a 37 Lilya team comp or a 37 Miss Newbabel team comp. But what I love about this team is that it is capable of dishing out even more damage against your primary focus, which is the Nightmare Lady boss, while at the same time keeping all those critters in check. Coming in at number 2 is none other than our Melania, Pickles, and Medicine Pocket team. This is actually the exact team comp that 3 of my viewers were able to clear Limbo 6-1 with. The beauty about this team comp is that there is absolute control over what the enemy is able to do. As many of you know, the critters that are on Limbo 6-1 are very troublesome. Not only are they very tanky, but they are also able to remove 1 point of Moxie from your entire team with their ultimate. So being able to keep their ultimate in check with the combination of Melania's Moxie stealing as well as Medicine Pocket's daze allows you to have full control over everything the enemy is trying to do, whether they are trying to daze you, whether they are trying to Moxie steal you or petrify you. This team comp, I think, is actually even better than a Melania, Pickles, and Tooth Fairy team comp, because this one is a lot more proactive and it is more of a full controlled team, which I absolutely love. Coming in at number 1 is our Collarbona, Pickles, Medicine Pocket team. I think what makes this team really shine on Limbo 6-1 is the ability to take down the little critters at lightning speed while at the same time maintaining control over the enemy actions via Medicine Pocket's daze. And as many of you know, Limbo 6-1 is weak to mineral, and so that gives this team an edge. But I think that of all the teams that are capable of dealing high damage output, I believe this team is able to dish out one of the highest damage outputs out there, while being able at the same time to deal both decent single target as well as multi-target damage with Collarbona.